Okay, my great pleasure to introduce Ada Čufer. Ada is right here with us, and Miran Mohar. Miran will be joining us via the link. Ada Čufer is a dramaturge, curator, writer, and professor of contemporary art history and theory. In 1984, she co-founded an art collective, NSK, Neue Slowenische Kunst, based in Ljubljana. Between 2005 and 20, she lived in the USA, where she taught at the Art History and Liberal Arts departments of the Maine College of Art. She is the recipient of a grant from Andy Warhol Foundation, stroke Creative Capital, for a book project still in progress. The focus of her research and writings is concerned with the ideologies of contemporary art, especially with the relationship of political and technological systems to art systems. So let's pass on now to Miran's short bio. Miran Mohar is, that's me, that's not him, is an artist, graphic and stage designer based in Ljubljana. He's a member of the artist group IRWIN, IRWIN, and co-founder of the art collective NSK, the graphic design studio, New Collectivism, and the Scipion Nasice Sisters Theater, which Ada has been connected with as well. Since 2008, he's also been an associate professor, head of the Fine Arts Department, and vice dean at the Academy of Visual Arts in Ljubljana. He's also a co-founder and member of the Marja Farol architectural movement, and since 2001, a member of the European Cultural Parliament. He was a tutor at the SCCA World of Art Curatorial School for 12 years. I apologize for such a dry series of introductions, but you understand the problem here. Just one thing that really kind of struck me about a particular link between both Ada and Miran. They were both founder members of the Scipion Nasice Sisters Theater group.
And that will be the main topic of our presentation.
Okay, well, I won't go on about it, but I was very struck by the meaning of that title, which I dare say will emerge. Now, what will happen here is that Ada will speak first, followed by Miran, and then Ada will do a kind of a summing up.
Okay, let's start. So thank you for introduction and for invitation. Our presentation will be slightly different than the one that we hear by now. It will not be philosophical. I guess it's also time for you to relax a little bit. It will be more a descriptive attempt to bring various things together, because this is how we understood our task, getting an invitation from your end. So I don't know if we understood it correctly, but we thought our job today is present the work of NSK. It stands from Neue Slowenische Kunst, German title, but it has to be German, so I'm not going to translate it. If there will be a chance, I will explain why German name later. To present the work of NSK with the emphasis on the work of theater section, Scipion Nasice Theater section. In continuation, I will refer to it as NSK First Theater section because of not breaking my tongue each time when I mention it. And also speaking about NSK and NSK Theater section first in relation to Slovene School of Philosophy and Psychoanalysis, also known as Slovene Lacanians or just shortly Lacanians, and second in relation to William Shakespeare. The script sounds quite complicated, but I think it should not be so difficult to put these things together. As a matter of fact, NSK and Lacanians were not very concretely and directly personally or professionally involved, but we were involved, the art collective and the philosophers, through a very specific and transformative cultural and political context of the 1980s in Slovenia and former Yugoslavia and Eastern Europe at large. This was, as you all know, the last decade of state socialism in that region. So if I would have to specify the nature of connection between the group of artists and the group of philosophers from Ljubljana, I would say that Lacanians, most prominently Slavoj Žižek, were the most astute interpreters of NSK work, especially of the work of early Laibach, with which I will also I will start just a little bit later. So the next question is, what did NSK have to do with Shakespeare? In this presentation, me and Miran Mohar will try to explain 2 points of connection of NSK Theater and Shakespeare. When we got this invitation, we remember something we both for a long time forgot, and this is a direct connection to Shakespeare involving the band staging of Shakespeare comedy, As You Like It, from 1983. It wouldn't be an important thing to remember if this band performance, which was supposed to be the graduation performance for me and theater director Dragan Živadinom, wouldn't trigger actually the founding of Scipion Nasice Sisters or the first NSK Theater. The second connection of NSK Theater, and here I mean NSK Theater section and NSK Theater at large, meaning the whole groups to Shakespeare, is very much, it's much more indirect and is based on my own interpretation that starting with Laibach, NSK as a whole employs the performative strategies and tactics that resembles Shakespeare's key dramaturgical stratagem, most consciously demonstrated in the play of Hamlet as a play within a play, that the character Hamlet himself named Mousetrap. I propose these 2 points of connection with Shakespeare in a reverse order, starting with the early Laibach and the critical response to it, also the critical response of Lacanians. In the second part, we will present the work of NSK Theater section from As You Like It to its last production called Baptism in 1986, which I think is, except Laibach 2 performances that I will introduce now, these are the 3 most important performative events of NSK, but also in general for the climate in the 1980s. As I said, I will start with two public events by Laibach, and now I will need my slide on, yes. First from 1982 and second from 1983, which I experienced as a spectator and were absolutely transformative for me personally as well as professionally. This is the image. I actually would prefer to show you the video excerpt because it was an incredible atmosphere there. This is an image of the Laibach first frontman, Tomaž Hostnik, in the concert called Novi Rok at Križanke in the September of 1992. So I was in that huge crowd surrounding the stage where Laibach concert was performed, together with my classmate at that time, Dragan Živadinov, also the co-founder of the theater section. We went to this very popular event, music festival, and there we saw something and experienced something as spectators that we were intuitively trying to create as the students of theater at the Academy of Theater Art at that time. But the question is how to explain now, more than 40 years later, what happened to me in the middle of that very crowded and energetic scene. The structure of the spectatorship radically changed by then. So I will have to rely on the memory of my own experience at that time, which largely depended on who I was at that time, which was an ambitious student of theater, raised in the middle working class family, having a father who worked for the police and thus belonged to the Yugoslav military class, wearing daily a very similar uniform as Laibach frontman wore at that concert. And of course, living in socialist Yugoslavia, identifying as Yugoslav, we had a choice to identify ourselves as Slovenes or Yugoslav. I was always choosing the Yugoslav identity, and we all grew under the glow of our president Tito, and so on. So I vividly remember this experience. Laibach frontman Tomasz Hosnik impersonated the Italian fascist dictator Benito Mussolini. How we know that he was impersonating Mussolini? A little bit because of his looks, but even much more because of his speech. Hosnik began by addressing the audience, "Cari amici soldati," so dear friends soldiers. Then he continued in the same aggressive oratory fashion, but at a certain point he switched voices like ventriloquist and moved from Mussolini's speech to the text from the National Constitution, also adopting a style of speech used by socialist politicians. And I remember this unbearable mixture of all those frightening vocal inputs clashing together in my psyche, mixed with the atmosphere of the crowd, which was really loud. I particularly remember the effect of the words spoken in Hosnik's outrageous voice had on me when he spoke about our legal rights as a citizens, and he spoke about those rights as those rights would be our sins, our guilt, and not the rights that should empower us. It is hard to say if the crowd enjoyed or hated these events. For example, somebody from the crowd threw a bottle of beer into the Hosnik's face and injured him. So for the rest of the contents, he has the blood dropping of his face. But for some of us, it produced some kind of shocking insight, some kind of breakthrough, or rather falling apart. Everything was somehow subverted as in a dream, or rather a nightmare. The experience was intensely charged. All the senses were somehow alert, but at the same time, it was not clear whether these were the feelings of fear or enjoyment, or extended cognition or total blackout. So it was one of those experiences which, as Shakespeare's Hamlet would say, for his mousetrap, that's how the mousetrap should work, spoke with another tongue, or the mousetrap, although it has no tongue, still speaks with the kind of miraculous language. So if I recapitulate what I just said, the spell which had constituted my senses of reality until then seemed to break into pieces at that moment. A shattering that happened in a very innermost sense as an internal experience affecting my own personal perceptual economy. So it was a very singular experience. Large volumes of content and meaning that had accumulated during my lifetime suddenly felt like an unnecessary burden, like an alien world implemented from the outside to the inside of myself. So, but what would remain of me if I would just get rid of it all? My once solid world suddenly crashed and fell apart like a broken mirror. So, although what I described was ultimately very personal experience, very singular experience, I could share my insights with my colleague Dragan Živadinov immediately after the concert. We were We really had a passionate discussion of wow, what we just saw. We agreed that what we had just seen gave a larger political and social dimension to what we were experimenting with in our small-scale academic theater events. This was not just an event of entertainment, but performative artwork involving complex ideas and strategies. We experienced what Bertolt Brecht, whom we admired and studied, will call Verfremdungseffect. Alternatively, we call it estrangement, defamiliarization, alienation effect. But who actually even knows what we are talking about? It's a singular experience. You feel it, you experience it, or you not. It's again, we touch this topic many times today. It's different to put it into the words. When I have my glasses on, I don't see you, so. Or in Shakespeare's own vocabulary, we saw and experienced King's guilty consciousness displayed. It seemed that many of us in that audience were screaming for lights. As you know, in this famous scene of Mousetrap, nothing really major happens except Claudius gets up and screams for lights, lights, lights. So we have this famous reversal of the stage turning into auditorium. And that's my interpretation that this is what happened in this concert, but even more so in the second event that I will describe just now. So, but the event that I just described was only the prelude to another threshold event. This experience again found me completely unprepared, this time at home alone watching the evening news on television. Immediately after the news, I saw the weirdest scene possible. Laibach members were sitting in an obviously stage-designed environment, giving an interview to the well-known TV journalist Jure Pengo in his popular weekly broadcast called TV Tednik, or Weekly. After the concerts in Ljubljana and later Zagreb, Laibach had grown into one of the most controversial cultural artistic phenomena in Slovenia and former Yugoslavia, attracting the popular attention of the mass audience, as well as the attention of intellectual politicians and so on. Of course, not everybody liked it. My first question watching that program was, how on earth did they manage to get on national TV, which was one of the main institutions of the socialist ideological state apparatus and, of course, highly controlled at that time, as it still is. It looked as a kind of threat. So Laibach TV appearance was at odds with any conventional protocol practiced by public media with such a high impact at that time. Members had accepted the invitation to give an interview for national TV under the condition that they would record it in their exhibition space at Skut's Gallery, not in the TV studio, and that they would be given the questions from the journalist in advance. So they basically accepted the interview, but plotted a performative response, kind of staged response. So therefore, during the recorded act, Laibach new lead voice Milan Frast, Tomaž Hostnik, that you saw before, passed away. It was a tragical story of the early Laibach period. So, who read the pre-written answers in an ominous voice while the others posed in silence like robots in a somewhat expressionistically, catastrophically arranged environment full of Laibach posters. The whole scene was profoundly odd. On one hand, it was amusing, but also frightening, especially considering the inherent prohibitions active in the social context in which the event took place. Watching that, I was first consciously aware of how Shakespeare's stratagem of the play within a play is supposed to function. That's, for the first time, I really connected these two. Its meaning and impact feeds on a very direct political context. The interview ended with an airy association of Laibach with the neo-fascist incident in Trieste and an appeal by the journalist to the national audiences to object and prevent this kind of provocations and abuses of, first, the name of Ljubljana itself, which is Laibach is the German name for Ljubljana, which was officially in use till the end of the First World War, because of the, to some of you probably not so well-known history of Slovenia and those regions throughout the modern times. And second, invocations of fascism and Nazism in the appearance were also unacceptable, especially in connection with the city of heroes, a city that not so long ago, actually only 40 years ago, survived and liberated itself from two subsequent occupations by fascist Italy and German Reich during the World War. So there was a strong prohibition on this kind of whatever memories, appearances, and so on. But the conflict with the German language runs much deeper, and I will try to address later because it would take me a lot of time to speak about that. However, this attempt to incriminate Laibach by the journalist, and it was clear to everybody that the journalist was getting the idea to do this interview from somewhere else, backfired. On one side, the mayor of Ljubljana banned the use of name Laibach in public circulations immediately after the event. They were not allowed to use that name anymore. On the other side, not all television viewers reacted as they predicted with the sense of outrage toward Laibach at all. And voices even from within the Communist Youth Organization and media such as Radio Student and weekly magazine Mladina came out strongly in defense of Laibach. I would claim that this intense rupture in public response and the struggle for the proper interpretation of the effects that Laibach performative events had marks the beginning of the accelerated democratization processes in Slovenia and Yugoslavia, and of course it got another push and intensity by glasnost and perestroika that was officially announced in Soviet Union in 1985 or 86. So the TV interview, opposite to the expectation of the authorities, produced an effect of estrangement, defamiliarization within the very public sphere in charge of the reproduction of late socialist normality, and therefore represent a turning point that led to the well-known historic drama that ended by the end of the decade, in fall of the Berlin Wall in 1989. These two events triggered the formation of NSK collective a year later, while they also had provoked a more serious critical and philosophical examination of punk, alternative culture, art and culture, and of course Laibach and other grassroots alternative cultural phenomena. So, coming now to the Lacanians and the intellectual or philosophical response to all this, the event that brought together alternative art and culture and intellectuals and philosophers in Ljubljana of the 1980s was a symposium organized just really shortly after this Laibach event on TV in November 83 in a disco club that represented a hub of alternative culture. The symposium was named in the form of a question, what is alternative? Among many insightful interpretations given at the symposium, I will only mention Slavoj Žižek's presentation that was later updated in a seminar and published in 1984 under the title Ideology, Cynicism, Punk. In this influential text, Žižek analyzed the effect of Laibach and generally punk music inspired alternative culture within the context of late socialist reality, Taken as an example, precisely the mentioned Laibach TV appearance and followed by a complex philosophical argument, Zizek claimed that typical punk posture, like we could also use Brecht term gestus, tended to mimic ruling rituals in a society by ridiculing and exposing the gap between hotly ideological norms and fundamental reality. Just that, unlike previous alternative strategies of the 60s and 90s, it did not provide any possible solutions, but in the final analysis functioned as a question or a symptom to be answered and analyzed, much like Hamlet's mousetrap, by the spectator himself or herself caught in this gap. In one of much later today's classic interpretation of Laibach, Zizek pointed out that such a question as what does Laibach think, say, do, or believe are false questions, because Laibach art itself functions in the form of question and therefore does not provide useful answer. Their art is designed to confront, intrigue, and provoke the viewer with urgent questions, but that does not answer those questions for them. So it's turning the focus of inquiry to the spectator itself. Are Laibach member fascist? Are they mocking communism, imitating totalitarianism, flirting with nationalism? Is Laibach art at all? And so on and so on. Like we just spoke about Hamlet and an endless question that it is over the centuries. So I think that's a proper way for art to function, to intrigue us and trigger our brain to process our reality endlessly. So between 1988 and 1994, I would even say that if there were two kind of dangerous events for Laibach or NSK were this interview for TV in 1983 and another event in 1987, which was the poster scandal. I'm not going to explain that, but it's very interesting to observe Zizek's reaction. He came in to start giving the profound, complex philosophical explanation of something that enraged people and had there was a danger that it would be simplified and, you know, kind of fallen apart. So he then summarized his reflections on early Laibach's play within a play in two subsequent texts, The Enlightenment of Laibach and Why are Laibach and NSK not fascist? Here he first explicitly discusses Laibach's effect on late socialist spectatorship as a form of over-identification within the ruling ideology, which in effect exposes a hidden reverse of the society and as a consequence ideally produces de-identification or estrangement, Verfremdung, from that very identity with which we are attached to that society. So a new space opens up. And now I will pass my word to Miran, and he will present a little bit the open space that we try to inhabit during that time.
Good day to everyone. Unfortunately, I couldn't come to London because of obligations in Vienna, but I think we can do it also this way. I'm feeling myself as I'm a part of Star Trek serial, because that serial people were communicating long distance. So for the first time with Ada, I'm doing a presentation from let's be in two places. So Ada already gave really, I would say, substantial and profound part of presentation. So I will talk now about theater part, but I need to tell you a little bit about the context also. In the 1984 Neue Slowenische Kunst was formed by three groups: Scipion Nasice Theater, Laibach, and IRWIN, which Laibach was formed in 1980, IRWIN in 83, and theater in 83 as well. My presentation will be not totally chronological because to explain all things in theater, I have to go a little bit back. So it was a post-Tito Yugoslavia, and interesting is that at that time it was a part also of the punk movement, civil society movement, and punk was a kind of movement against institution, against the state. But we were always, we were not beloved by the state because we were too, how to say, too much a state. And also for the alternative art scene, we were not enough alternative, not enough punk. So, maybe we can go to the next slide, please. Okay, here you can see Neue Slowenische Kunst chart, where IRWIN, Laibach theater are part of, and this chart was designed after Laibach chart, which they did in the 1980. So as you see here, you see a big bureaucratical organization with many departments, and many of these departments were functional, of course, still are today. So, and now I would like to go on. Can you please go on the next slide? Okay. Ada, Čufer, Dragan Živadin, and I already knew each other when we were students at the I was student at the Art Academy, and Dragan and Ada were students of Academy of Theater and Film, and we start to do experimental performances at the Academy, and we experimenting with directing, scenography, dramaturgy, and so on, and some of them were so radical for that time that at the end they banned this program, that they said it's not, there's too much radical. In this performance, I think it was Caligula, and I think it was Camus text. I made a stage design with flour and water, and with a kind of mixer for cement, for beton. And then this kind of material grows and filled almost all stage, and it went even to the public and so on. And in one of the performances, there, I think if you show me the next slide, you can see even how it, not the best slide, but you can see something how it looked. And for another show kind of novel, where I put on the set a big fish I don't have a photo from that, in the kind of plastic bag, big bag, which kind of enlarged this fish and it became really big. The fish was killed during the performance, and because of that, this program stopped. I'm showing this and talking this because this was our first collaboration, which later on, if you go for, please go for next slide. Yes. Okay. So we are now talking about the Shakespeare play As You Like. We were asked, this was should be a diploma piece for Dragan Živadin and probably also Ada, maybe it's not just Dragan. And we prepared the whole scenario for theater performance as a kind of comic book. So each scene was described, was drawn and written. Please, yeah, just stop here. It's okay. So you can see that in Slovenian language, we we write all the text, all the dialogues, and so on. So we did a kind of theater engineering. Everything was prepared in advance, and just to be put it on the stage. Of course, the set design is also a form of directing, because with the space you are designing, you're also defining the type of interpretation. In this period, in the 1983, it was especially sensitive because Laibach was banned as a band. They could only appear without Laibach name, because Laibach is the German name for Ljubljana, and you cannot use it at that time because of the German language, which represents also traumatic experience of the Second World War, the Nazism. So we have been working on this, and at the end, because of the concept and context, they decided not to do it. But this event, this ban of not ban, but not allowing us to do this show, created a space that we could start to work on the idea to create our own theater. So the Scipion Theater, Scipion Nasice Theater, was established the same year. Dragan Živadin, Ada, and I established it, and we started it was this establishment of this theater was also a kind of critique of institutional theater based on text, on dramatic text, mostly very conservative. We were calling such principle of acting talking heads, and basically Ada was how to say. She wrote most of the text, the manifestos, and then we, not going to detail because we don't have so much time for that, we proposed the period of 3 years through which we will go through all phases, from, let's put it this, avant-garde phase of artist to the retro classic. So basically we defined the time of existence of Theater Nasice, and inside we made 3 performances and 1 proposal for Tito's birthday ritual, which was never realized. And then in Belgrade, symbolically, we made a suicide, and we started a new theater. So now I don't want to be too long because I know we only have 1 hour.
What images do you want me to be shown?
So here you see photos from the first performance called Hinkeman, and in this performance, what was interesting, nobody knew who we are, who are Scipion Nasice. Now it's calling she called NSK Theater. We were just mentioned as sisters of Scipion Nasice, and we basically didn't allow that people would go to buy tickets, but we invited the public. So the public couldn't come to the theater by themselves. They were invited, and they come to the special place, and in this special place they meet a military officer who bring a member of the public to the policeman, to the priest, and priest bring it to Sister Scipion, which was Ada, and they come to the performance place. So basically the performance were taking place in the private apartment of one of the young directors, and I think it was about 27 audience who could perform it. Nobody knew who we are. Then, if you go on, the next slide. Okay, now we are here with a performance Mariana Blotska. Mariana Blotska was a performance which took place also in a private apartment in Ljubljana, and the audience is sitting in special halls and observing the show from this kind of halls. Public were entering also to our invitation, and they were also invited as a public. They had to go through a special place, walking like over the roof, where we covered their eyes, so they didn't know where they are coming. They were coming to the space without knowing where they are. Inside this space, actors were acting around the head, around their Alps, which kind of symbolize this kind of, I would say, smallness of Slovenia, a space around it. And you can see inside the theater, go please back. Inside the theater, you also have another small theater in the theater, as Eda already mentioned. So all these productions were in the early phase were done just by our own money, the money of Dragan Živadinov grandmother from France and so on. So we were, but each of these performances were also invited to be the festival. So at that moment we became quite popular. We were doing these performances in all over Yugoslavia, and we also with this show Nablotska, we were touring also UK. We were in I think we were in Edinburgh Festival, but because of the fire on the stage, after six times we put it, it was banned all over the UK. So it was just I think 6 in UK. So I think now we can go on.
Miran, I would now say something before we start with baptism. May I?
Yes, please.
Then you will, okay. If this works, can I keep speaking? Yes, so as Miran just described, the NSK Theater section had a plan which was limited to a certain task to be performed in a few years, progressing from the so-called illegal stage to the stage of exorcism to the stage of retroclassic, and in the founding manifesto or text, it announced a very ambitious and arrogant task that the goal of this theater group is to reform the official state-sponsored theater culture in Slovenia, and after the task is achieved, it will abolish itself, it self-terminate itself. So in stating that in 1983, nobody actually would, in a dream, anticipate the opportunity that came about in 1984 or 1985. What you see here is the beginning of the building of the completely new cultural center called Cankarjev Dom, Cankar House. It was the building began in the late 70s, and it was almost finished in 1982. The institution already functioned, and what was really interesting that with the first 2 performances from illegal to exorcist stage, we didn't have official way, there was no internet, we didn't have an opportunity to publicize or to advertise our performances through newspapers and so on. What we were doing, we were sending personal letters of invitation to these performances to mostly theater people.
dramaturgs, actors, critics, and so on. So these were the first audience. And so the first kind of programming director for theater of this new institution, which looked like that. And this is the stage where we will perform we performed our last performance called Baptism. Actually was aware with our work, and he said, like, let's do something really bold, which is he proposed that we would take over the performance for the so-called Culture Day of Slovenia, which is celebrated on February 8th and it's dedicated to the death of Slovenian national romantic poet, equivalent to Shakespeare or Goethe or Walt Whitman or something like that. And he wrote so-called first Slovenian artificial, help me, Gregor, mythological poem or something, artificial myth, of the Slovenian. It has a hero who is like Slovenian hero called Črtomir, and the story goes like he lost his kingdom, at the time when there was the Christianity started extending to these territories. So, the small Slovenian state called Carantania was taken over by the Germanic Christianizers. So it's a myth about the loss of the political independence and the century-long submission to the so-called Germanic culture. It's something very tricky. So they offer us to stage this poem on this barely new stage for, with an auditorium of 3,000 people, and nobody performed there before. It was also like, when I heard that, I didn't sleep very well because I didn't know how we were going to approach that, and also you couldn't reject that kind of offer. It would not be fair. So what we decided, and Miran will know, it was a very, very complex production. What we decided to completely, because the whole story of this theater coming out from school, Slovenia this is again too long story, is based on language, is logocentric culture. At our school, the way that we were trying to actually create visual theater, even that As You Like It script was very visual. It played with the pop art, with camp, with the contemporary visual and avant-garde forms, which was against the tendency of the official culture, which was very, very literary based. And so we decided that was very sacrilegious to completely actually drop any literary text, forget Prešeren, just take the baptism, the name of baptism, and perform in a visual matter some kind of crossing of the world, like epochal transition, like visually represent the drama of transition, like from modern, from 19th century to 20th century visual world, from Christianity, paganism to Christianity, whatever, This was the visual music performance in the end. So now I will give back the word to Miran, and then I will make some conclusions by the end. Okay,
Miran? Yes, perfect. So I think that this performance, retro-evangelistic event, baptism, was a kind of miracle. I will explain why. As As You Like, prepared the whole kind of theater engineering. Here we also made a kind of book in which we planned every movement. I mean, as we draw it, as we collage it, we realize it. I mean, you can see some of the, you will see later on some comparisons. So what happened with this show? With this show, in the Cankarjev Dom, they had a new technology, a lot of special theater mechanics, which was for the first time available in Yugoslavia and Slovenia. And what we did, no, we were asked to do this probably because they saw a possibility that we can use it fully compared to other theaters which too much based on text. And when we enter in, they let us in, but when we were in, they were very much afraid what's going to happen. They hate that they don't have anybody else who can do it. So we made a team, Eda, Draga, and me, with architects, my colleagues from IRWIN, who help us to do visualization. Of course, they were not conceptual collaborators, but they IRWIN technically help us to realize all these sketches. And you know, the funny thing was that we didn't have experience working in the theater. So we had to hire assistants who were more skilled than we were. People who were involved in the film production, in opera, ballet, and so forth. So it was an extremely expensive show. And we actually visualized this national myth of baptism, but we were baptizing art inside, not ideological, not ideology or religion. In the whole show, we have about 12 different set designs, and the set, the curtain never went down, always was up. So we had to plan mechanical changes, movement, and so forth, a kind of choreography of object. We even had police dogs on the stage and so forth, so who were choreographed. But we were not fascinating, we didn't want to fascinate the public with spectacles. This crucial scene here is when in the Wagner Heiligenwald, holy forest, comes Kandinsky, the forest of abstract shapes. So this is kind of the most, I would say, symbolical point. And when the critics saw this show, they didn't know what to do because they were not text. The theater critics are not visual critics, so they didn't know what to write. They did, so the show was very much affecting the media, and even the police, the secret police, came inside and interviewed the people in the offices. What kind of message we wanted to give it, you know? But of course, there was no message. Political message in a sense, just the fact that all NSK was in the heart of the nation, Sankari Odom at that time, was a political message. And because of the reaction on this show in the media and so forth, people were, how to say, all the country, the whole Slovenia, and later on partly Yugoslavia, become a stage. So basically, the show went beyond the borders of the theater, and it entered to the media, among the debate and so on. We were invited, you know, that's interesting for the British maybe public. We were invited for the Lips Festival to the British National Opera. I was already in London. I saw the opera stage. They prepared the contract, but in Slovenia they said we are not going there because British opera should pay everything or something like that, stupid. Basically, we were not politically right to represent Slovenia in London with such a show. And therefore, the show only went to Belgrade, and after that, we already abolished the theater, and I think that after that, we started with a new theater, Red Pilot. So, Eda, maybe you can add something here. I would stop probably.
Yeah, I will make some conclusion. How are we with time? Yeah, so this will be
a few words. So I would like to conclude with my opinion that the presented Laibach TV interview from 1983 and Baptism from 1986 were two most influential artistic or cultural events of socially and politically transformative 1980s, both owe their importance to controversial permission of an alternative cultural forces to address large audience. The first one through TV network, and the second one through the, at that time, largest theatrical stage in the country. And by that they triggered passionate debates and fights in the public and media, and fights and debates are the sign of the democracy in a way, or democratization. So in the 1983 the fight was still attached to the socialist ideology and its state apparatuses, but already in 1986 this debate and fight already shifted to the question of national identity and nationalism. That went very quickly, and baptism really kicked into that nerve. So what I would say about baptism, it is that function in a twofold manner. For the Slovenians who knew the background about Prešeren and baptism and the whole story about that, it spoke clearly through the narrative and the choreography, and even for non-Slovenian, it still spoke through the visual imagery, which was taken from the known modernist visual art. It was quoting visual art things, and with music and so on. So it still worked without knowing about that mythological background. So NSK art was riding on the waves of the historic process, leading to some final chapters in 1987 and the well-known resolutions between 1989 and 1991. So I would just like to conclude again with another Lacanian, Alenka Zupančič, in her review of baptism. She was probably then, because I know she's 2 years younger than me, so if I was then 26, she was probably 22 or something like that, very young. So she wrote a review for the radio students, focused on the critical response to the performance, analyzing different conflicting sides and opinions that came to the surface. And she concluded that theater in any epoch perform a socializing function, and this is the reason why sometimes in the specific historic moments it can become a site of political struggles. And from that standpoint, she argued, summarizing the idea of play within a play apparatus, socially relevant stage is not on the stage, but in the auditorium. So this was the... So that's...